Good morning, my creative friends. Welcome to Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. All right, so I have all kinds of ideas this morning sort of rolling around in my head, but mostly we're going to be talking about owl energy this morning, And we are working this week, and I found this at thegraphicsfairy.com. She has some great drawing guides and graphics, and I loved these cute little owls. And when you think about owls that you see in art, you see playful, silly owls, you see serious owls, you see gorgeous photography of owls. And owls were very trendy in graphic design over the last few years, so you saw a lot of fun owls all over the place. But I really loved this little cutie pie and thought he would be simple to recreate in my journal. Good morning, Marion. Delighted that you're here. I also have a couple of the Sacred Circle designs that my son Connor created. This one was colored by my daughter Maggie while she was home over the holidays. So I'm going to do something maybe with this one, or this one's feeling sort of moon-like. This is a really old one that Connor created years and years ago, and I have kept it around for a long time. I love all these sparkly gel pens, but I also, I love repurposing my art and using it in different ways. One of the reasons we created our Mindful Patterns membership is to have a place and for people to come together and create around mindful meditation using these Sacred Circle designs. And this one jumped out off the shelf at me this morning. I really love the affirmation. So each of our designs has an accompanying affirmation. This one says, I trust and believe that everything is always working out for my highest good. I trust and believe that everything is always working out for my highest good. And I may be more drawn to the affirmation even than to the Sacred Circle design, just because when I think about the wisdom of owl, owl is able to see in the dark. Owl is about trusting our intuition. Owl is also about both independence and solitude and community. They hunt alone, but they often live in rookeries with other owls. So I really love this idea of the connection of owl to this affirmation. So not sure if this is going to end up on my page or not, but definitely that affirmation I think is going to finish off my page. But I was kind of drawn to these really neutral, earthy colors that my daughter had picked here. And my husband gave me this super fun book. I'm going to get some background color on here for Christmas. That is a book full of different palettes, and we didn't even realize it till I got it home and opened it, that all those, I'm looking for some dark indigo, there's a nice phthalo blue, I'm looking for my indigo, but we didn't realize it until we got it home that it's all based on natural dyes, and from different plants and flowers and herbs. I know I had some indigo in here somewhere, bear with me for a moment. Okay, I can't find it, but this turquoise is speaking to me, so we'll get this turquoise going down on here and just create a background. And hopefully you're going to paint and draw along with me, practice drawing your own owls. But I'm just going to get some color down on my background here. But Maggie and I had a lot of fun over the holidays being, oh, that's a gorgeous, gorgeous color, being inspired by these natural palettes and using markers and colored pencils and just playing with these different palettes. And so this was inspired by one of those palettes. And that color doesn't quite mix there. As always this morning, I had already done some journaling about the wisdom of owl. Then I painted over that journaling with first some color and then some gesso, so I can still see some of the places where that writing is peeking through on these pages, which is awesome. Aha, found the indigo. This is what I wanted. So we're just going to mix these together. This is a golden high flow, I think they're called. Yeah, high flow acrylic, very, very thin and also translucent. So I'm going to get some nice layering effects of these. I've always been drawn to owl, and one of the things that I find fascinating about owl, and we talked about this with our other symbols last week too, and this week as we're exploring animal symbolism. Okay, that's a really cool looking page. I'm wondering if I turn this light on, if you can kind of see some of the turquoise. It doesn't show great in this light, but I can really see the turquoise sort of popping through. That light makes it so glary, but I can see the blends of those two colors, and that's really making me happy right now, and get my fingers all painty as well. But owls live on every continent around the world except Antarctica. That's a fascinating fact that I didn't know until I was doing a little bit of research this morning. And different kinds of owls all over the world, But I was also thinking about some of my own personal encounters with owls in the wild. And there's actually, I should have thought to look that up this morning. I may link it in the comments a little bit later. There is a Mary Oliver poem that's one of my favorites that is all about the owl. And Mary Oliver is one of my favorite artists. Okay, I'm not sure, I just hit my autofocus button and that changed the light, but we're gonna go with it for a minute and see. Okay, weirdness. Technology, such a gift and a challenge at times. Lots of poems have been written by owls. One of my favorite sort of nursery rhymes, excuse me, from childhood. I'm just going to add a little white, kind of create a little cloudy sky here. The Owl and the Pussycat. I always loved the Owl and the Pussycat. Just kind of adding some clouds to the sky here. I don't know what that light did, but it's just bugging me. And I found some of the old original illustrations for a summer camp art project that I taught a few years ago with a couple of friends. Just getting a little bit of maybe a cloudy sky going here, just sort of, again, as always, trusting my intuition. But I love the owl and the pussycat that went out to sea in a boat. So owls occur across cultures, across time, across mythologies and stories, but they seem to sort of share that symbolism of wisdom, intuition, keen insight because of their ability to see in the dark. And over the years, I've had a few really amazing encounters with owls, especially while we were living in Goleta, California, and with barn owls and a great horned owl. We've also seen burrowing owls in a few different places. I'm just continuing to move this paint around, play with my background, which are quite amazing to see. They're these tiny little owls that live in holes in the ground instead of in trees. But there was one holiday season where my husband's family was visiting, and we were driving back and forth to the rental house where they were staying, and there was a barn owl. It was just my son and I in the car. Maybe we were even on the way home from school, doesn't matter. And my spray bottle. And we were driving home, and this barn owl was just sitting right on the side of the road, and he let us get up really close to him and get some pictures. And he stayed in the area for days, and every time we would drive by, we would see this barn owl, and it was just amazing to get up close and personal to him. And I thought we were pretty close. We were kind of close. And then a number of years later, they opened a new hiking trail, and so my husband and I went out to check out this hiking trail. And at one point, we were kind of up on the top of a little bit of a bluff, and there was a creek bed down below us, probably 8 or 10 feet, not dramatic, but a barn owl literally came flying right at our eyesight over this creek bed, and it was just an amazing, amazing experience to literally be face to face with this barn owl. And he flew by us a couple of times. Like it was just an incredible experience. We've heard lots of owls. In Texas, we used to hear these crazy screech owls, which have this, very loud. I'm just waiting for this to dry a little bit, and I want to be able to go back in. And I've showed this technique before where I just sprayed water and I'm letting that dry, and it just creates this marbled, beautiful pattern on the background here. And I may want to do that again up on this top part. You can see this beautiful patterning here. Screech owls sound kind of crazy. We used to hear them at our house in Plano, Texas. So over the years, a lot of amazing encounters with owls and other birds. So my husband's parents are avid bird watchers. And I'm going to hit this with a dryer for just a second, and then I'll tell you more about my experiences with birds. But I'm going to go ahead and mute myself so you don't have to listen to the dryer. Make sure I unmute myself. So really getting almost like a night sky with a lot of stars in the sky. And any of these techniques that I show in my visual journal, which is such a great place to practice, can easily be transferred to canvas. And so I love the way that this creates this beautiful, just textured background. And the secret is to let the water sit and let the paint around it dry. Let the paint around it dry. So this feels pretty dry while I decide what I want to do next. Making sure we get all that water off there. So I'm married into a family of bird watchers. So my husband and I have been amateur, still isn't as focused as I would like it to be, amateur bird watchers for most of our lives. And it's something we get a lot of joy and pleasure out of. Okay, somehow this wants to be on here, but I'm not sure why, and it might even end up going over here on this facing page or become a little tip in or something, but somehow maybe it's the colors I'm feeling inspired by. I'm not sure certain yet, so I'm going to let that sit there for a minute. So we've had a lot of fun bird watching in all the places that we've lived and places that we've traveled over the years, and we've seen some pretty amazing birds. My daughter is at university, and I still have this feather from yesterday that keeps calling me too. So I'm not sure where that feather is going to show up, but I decided that I wanted to draw my owl on paper and collage him in, and that gives me a chance to sort of practice drawing as well. So I was doing a little bit of practice before the call, noticing his eyes are a little far apart, but I love that this is a whimsical owl, not a realistic owl. I painted plenty of both whimsical and realistic ones. And there's something magical about noticing the birds just in our neighborhood. And we had enjoyed, especially during the pandemic, we seemed to have a inordinate large number of orioles that would fly through, and we thought, oh, you know, maybe when we get to Colorado that the birds are not going to be as colorful or as interesting. We spent a lot of years in Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park, which has its own suite of birds and owls. We had we saw a huge barn owl there, or a great horned owl there one time in Rocky Mountain National Park, sitting in the middle of a field, probably hunting. And we got here in this spring, we had all these beautiful indigo and lazuli buntings and orioles and so many amazing birds that we really enjoyed bird watching on our morning walks. Okay, so I'm thinking about what size do I want my owl to be as I'm prattling on about bird watching. I'm wanting to be probably about the size of the sheet of paper, and this is just a plain, you know, kind of a little bit heavier weight piece of printer paper, nothing special. And I thought about collaging the owl. I've had all kinds of thoughts this morning, but I think I'm just going to start with drawing the owl, and we'll see where we get to. So knowing that I actually going to do it a little bit differently than she did, because I want to play with the size. And when I'm sketching like this and knowing I'm going to cut it out and sort of collage this on or paint over the top, like, let yourself be sketchy with it. You know, I think when we try to draw sort of those perfect lines, that's when we start to get ourselves a little bit stuck. And I like owls that have really big eyes, because remember, I'm trying to make him a little more whimsical, a little less realistic, but I did really like the shape of the owl. So noticing that how these lines line up, right? So this is what makes this so easy when we get these eyes in, and then we just have this big oval. So I'm just following these lines all the way around to create this oval. Although I'm kind of feeling like I want him to be a little bit fatter. I like a little fat, funky owl. So taking some creative license here. And maybe if he's going to be a little fatter, does that mean that his eyes really need to be just a little bit bigger? And I can always edit as I cut him out too. So again, just playing with this owl, noticing, just like we were doing with the horse yesterday, that sense of proportion, right? If we were to, you know, sort of measure this width here, and then repeat that here, his body is about, I know, isn't that a great tip, Kay? I love those super easy eyes too. And so noticing this is about, you know, 1.5 the time of his eyes, and mine here is like 1, 2.5, so my body is probably a little bit too long. So I'm going to come in and shorten that up a little bit. And I want to make him a little more round. And again, you'll see once this is all cut out and painted, I won't see all of these lines, letting myself be very sketchy. I kind of like this here. I might even give him some ears like a great horned owl. So again, taking that creative license. He's sort of sitting on a tree branch here, which makes him feel landed on the page and not lost, right? So it's great to have our owl sitting on something. And then I always notice these lines, right, are kind of lined up with the outside edge of his eyes. So that helps us get those proportions of tail right, to have that just kind of come down here. It's almost as if we're drawing a human face, right? And owls tend to have kind of squarish tails. I think what feels like I still want those inner eyes to be bigger, but I can play with that once I get him painted up. I noticed this the first time that I did it. I am noticing how close together the eyes are, and I really like that in hers. And then his beak is a diamond, right? His beak is a diamond shape, which gives him his playful little face. And then we've got little wings here on the side, sort of coming down right to the top. And then we just have this silly, simple little eye, the simple little owl, right? I do like the graphic element of how she's done it, but again, part of this is, you know, making the owl my own as well. And you know, I might even come in and notice where I might add some more color around here. Okay, so we have a silly little owl. His ears look kind of small, so I'm wondering, what if I even made those a little bit bigger? It's always like sort of surprises me that, you know, great horned owls really do have ears or tufts of feathers. So again, I've got these two different versions. This one much more like her original. This one starting to make it a little bit my own. Thinking maybe that tail is a little bit too long. And thinking that's going to fit just about right in my page. And so now I'm going to decide, do I want to glue him down first or paint him first? And I'm thinking I'm going to glue him down first. And this is going to go on this page as part of something else. I'm not sure what, because I'm thinking it is kind of like moon and sky-like. I think that's why it was appealing to me. So I'm going to cut this little guy out. And I didn't draw his little feet yet. because I will do that with paint at the end. And this is a nice way when you're working in your visual journal to not be so attached to what it is that you're drawing, to practice on paper, or even to do what I'm doing, draw it on paper and then collage it on, because it's just paper and you can practice multiple times. We can get too attached to what we're drawing and worry that we're messing it up when we're working straight into our journal pages. I also love texture and building up layers of meaning in my pages, and so doing it this way helps to build up some of those elements as well. And I'm thinking I'm going to just chop off the branch for now. I know where that branch is going to go, but the size of that branch may change. It was helpful to draw it, but this is going to give me a true representation of my size of my owl. And he fills in, so my branch is going to extend much longer here. And these colors are kind of fun up there, so I'm going to go ahead and glue this down and then glue the owl down on top of that. I'm going to use matte medium. And I tested before I got on live this morning what matte medium would do over the top of, these are just inexpensive markers that we were coloring with, and I definitely, the colors smeared a little bit with the matte medium. I was careful about putting them on and just pulled that color off to see how much I would lose, and not that much, which I think I'm going to actually like here, that it's going to sort of maybe fade these colors and blend them a little bit with my image, and I may even end up painting over this somewhat. So we'll see. So I've got my handy dandy catalyst wedge. It's going to take a fair amount of matte medium to get this down onto the page. I'm going to put matte medium both on my surface. My surface is still wet, or my catalyst wedge still has some paint, but I want to get that down on my surface as well as onto the back of my paper to make sure I get a nice flat surface. It's a little bit more than I need, but we're going to smear that all over the top, trying not to get that underneath. I'm going to stick that under there. So again, Graphics Fairy is where the instructions for drawing these sweet little owls came from. She has a lot of great little, really just these simple tutorials. Oh, it's actually making those colors look nice and vibrant on there. So fun. Okay, so I'm going to do the same with my owl, start to get these layers built up, just using the matte medium that was left because I had way too much. And I'm wondering if he's going to go over here, and maybe there's going to be a fun little speech bubble on here with this affirmation that I was drawn to this morning. I love adding words, and I don't care that he's getting, you know, color and paint on him. We're going to paint all over him anyway. But I love adding words at the end. Really, to me, are part of that visual journaling practice that make things sometimes feel finished or complete, or remind me of the meaning and the intention with which I set out to create the page. So trying not to get this all glued together with all that matte medium there. So like I said, I love painting owls that are realistic, and I also love painting ones that are simple and just a little more graphic. And I'm using this catalyst wedge. You could do it also with a old gift card or hotel key card to really smooth that out, getting any wrinkles out of those collage elements, because when we want to go paint over the top of them, we definitely want them to be as smooth as possible. And this was a page that started already with a lot of texture on the page. All right, so we have him on here. And now I get to decide. I'm thinking that I'm going to echo some of the yellows and oranges and this pretty kind of burnt sienna that are here in the owl, but I still want to keep him bright and playful. Again, not too worried about making him super, super realistic, just making sure that's not totally stuck together there. So I'm going to find some of those colors here. So I've got a bright cadmium orange, trying to use up, these are the ends of a lot of my Nova paints. This cadmium yellow light, I really like their paints. I've also got my favorite. This is an Azo Yellow Deep from Amsterdam. It's kind of an orangey yellow that I really like, and I like Amsterdam paints. Maybe some of this Naples yellow. And I don't know if I have maybe some nickel Azo gold for that kind of burnt sienna color. And I've got a nice raw umber for a really dark instead of a black that would replace a black. I love metallic, so maybe some fun copper for that burnt sienna as well. So we'll just see where these colors take us. They're sort of owl-like colors. I also have this bronze yellow that I really love, and so what I'm feeling like would be a really great idea at this point is to actually swatch, do a little swatching to see what kind of colors, which of these are going to go together, which are going to speak to me. So let's put a few of these just on this piece of paper. Swatching is such a great way to, so those two really aren't, to me, going together, at least not yet, we'll see. But swatching is a great way to test colors. I even do this when I'm simply coloring sacred circle designs. Here I was working, I have notes on here from whenever I colored this one, that I was working with analogous colors of blue and purple with a complementary color of yellow, right? And so right now I'm working with kind of all of these almost neutrals, or sort of these very warm colors of yellows and oranges. So just getting all of them down on the page here a little bit. You can hardly tell what the colors are, but give me a minute and I'm going to spread them out. Thanks, Yvonne. Good morning. Right, Kay? Isn't that's one of my favorite designs of Connor's. It's one of an older design, not a more recent design. But if you love the design, I'm happy to pop it into the Mindful Patterns membership for you. But this was one that I did a lot of pattern drawing over the top of the coloring, like we were talking about last night. Okay, so I've got this gorgeous copper, which is going to be similar to my nickel Azo gold here. I've got this bronze yellow, which is kind of a greeny yellow, and that actually might work really well for my tree branch to show up. This was the Naples yellow, which is kind of this warm yellow. And I'm going to clean off my brush on my page up here, but I'm not washing my brush because I want it to stay really dry. This is that gorgeous, this yellow, so I'm really liking that yellow. Is very similar to this one, the Azo Yellow Deep, and in fact I have so much of this on my brush, but I'm just going to come in and put a layer of that on his little body, because what a fun color is that, and that helps me use up some of that paint. So I'm really liking these colors. Don't think I want any of this bright orange unless it's for an accent, and I'm going to stick with the yellows that I have here and see where I can get to. But first we're just going to get some color down on his body. and start to paint that over. I may go grab my Poscas because he's going to be a fun one to add some details to, using a big brush. And so I'm thinking I want to just kind of loosely bring back where I might want that branch to go, so that later on I can go back and add some of these colors. And I don't want him to be sort of floating in the air, right? Just I want him to feel like he's a little grounded and landed, which is the purpose of having him sitting. This is interesting. It sort of mimics the idea that there's a full moon, but behind him, which is often something that we see with owls, right? Like the nighttime skies. Yep, I will find it for you, Kay, for sure. I really love this one with the circles as well. It's a really fun one to color. Let's get my brushes nice and clean and dried off again while I decide where I want to go. So I'm thinking that this raw umber is going to be a nice dark, and will work well for his eyes. I'm using a variety of just inexpensive brushes, nothing fancy. I'm thinking I'm going to come in and start his eyes really dark, and we'll build up layers. This also is going to allow me to just be present here a moment with his eyes, kind of get them more or less the same size. And I love those big fat eyes already. He's coming along a little silly and playful. And bring some of those darks in. And his wings tend to be pretty dark, but their breast actually tends to be pretty light, with sort of modeled a lot of the whites and grays. I'm definitely going to want to get some white down on here, and he's going to need to be very bright and playfully colored in order to sort of stand out from his background anyway. I'm going to get a layer of this dark on my branch here. Anybody else have any fun owl stories or encounter with owl? I'm sure I'm not the only one. They're fun and simple to draw and to paint, and so it's it's one of those things that shows up a lot in all kinds of art and cute cards. So I'm going to start building up some texture and just little feathery bits. And it always amazes me how often owls appear when I'm doing any kind of animal readings. I was sharing yesterday that I tend to just be very attuned to animals. I notice when they're around me. I spend a lot of time looking and paying attention. And I was talking to a girlfriend yesterday, just having a nice fun catch-up call and telling her what I was up to, and she had drawn a couple of oracle cards. Says every year she draws 2 sort of animal guides for the year, and that she had drawn squirrel and buffalo. And I started laughing because here I have literally a squirrel painting over on my studio table that I'm working on, and as I've been using my own oracle deck lately, buffalo energy has been showing up. I don't even know what buffalo stands for. It's not an animal I think about that often, not an animal that I see where I live. We had a close encounter with a buffalo on a hiking trail one time in Yellowstone. We got a little piece sticking up here. Where did my matte medium go? So this is all looking a little too similar in color, not enough variation in color. So I'm going to have to come in and really work to brighten this up, but I'm going to get his little wings stuck down there. But we're just working on those base layers, and I'm almost thinking that I'm going to want to come in and add something over the top, maybe even this bright yellow over the top of this whole design to just push that back a little bit. I'll still be able to see the colors and the patterns underneath. And the nice thing about putting matte medium over the top of an image or a design like this is that it allows us then to paint over the top of it, to wipe that paint away if needed, and really push back to the color underneath. So let's see what happens if we just come in and smooth this out a little bit so that it's not standing out quite so much. So again, it's not, I don't want to disappear all those patterns. That marker is kind of even bleeding through the matte medium a little bit, which is interesting. Not good or bad, just noticing how it's all kind of blending. But all of a sudden it gets this, I still get the pretty design, but I also, it just feels more harmonious and not quite so dramatic on the page. Just get the rest of that yellow back onto my little owl here. Again, just using up that paint as much as possible, wiping it off on my newsprint that I'm working on. And the point of that is to put as little paint as possible into the water system. Let's see, I'm almost wondering, so it's really, and I might even come back in with a white Posca and bring some of those shapes of the patterns back and brighten that up a little bit more. He's definitely going to take me a little bit longer than an hour today to get to, and that's okay. I'm really enjoying just being with this owl, and sometimes I don't even feel the need to finish something in one sitting, depending on how much time that I have. Let's see, I think I want a little tiny brush here. So I'm going to come in and do an inner ring in his eye. Again, we're making him playful, not realistic. And then I will do one more circle of that raw umber to give his eyes some shape. And I'm going to start to just come in and really brighten him up with a lot of white. Give him those little ears. And I'll continue to just work back and forth with these layers of color until I'm happy with where I'm getting to. And I'm thinking that I might want to just, I still want to keep that brown and some of those variations of color, but they just need to be a little bit brighter. So remember to have fun really playing and exploring with mixing your own colors, even though these are all in the similar family, just by mixing them together. You can kind of make those colors your own. So I wasn't wanting those to be pure white. I'm probably wanting them to be even a little more dark brown, but we're going to start just building up the layers. It's what I love about working with acrylics is the, okay, this one got longer than this one. Let's just lengthen that one so they're similar, is that ability to just mix and play, just to continue to add layers. And when you think about what a bird looks like from a distance, you can just, with the smallest strokes of your brush, kind of create the illusion of feathers and patterns without having to put a lot of detail into things. So bringing some of that light into his tail as well. Just again getting that fun little bit of a shape there. Brighten up these circles around his eyes a little bit. And the more white I put on him will allow me to come back in over the top with that yellow and make that yellow really pop. So I'm just working on adding some feather-like texture. And if I keep him pretty simple, then I can have some fun bringing back the patterns in my design at the top up there. So again, just kind of that illusion of feathers. I can still see the variety of colors, but allowing the brush to do the work for me. All right, he's coming along, sort of liking the mix of these colors here. I want to be able to see those little funny tufts as if he were a great horned owl. It's one of my favorite owls. So my daughter, I started to share earlier, is at the University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon, and they have an amazing raptor rescue place. And so last summer when we went out to help her get settled in for her junior year, that was one of the places she wanted to take us, and we saw all kinds of amazing raptors, including owls from around the world, some that I had never heard of before. And they were all animals that had been injured. And it's one of the places that, they will make efforts to rehabilitate them and return them to the wild. And then if they can't be rehabilitated, then they live out their lives being fed and nurtured. But they exercise them and play with them and train them. We got to watch them crate training them, so they often will take them around to festivals or schools and use them for teaching animals. It's amazing how long-lived they are. When I think about raptors, I think about so it's been a long time, like 10, 11 years ago when we moved from Texas to California. We took 2 weeks and drove from Texas to California, and there's so much to see on the way. And one of the things we did was to take the kids to the Grand Canyon, and we got to see the condors that have been released into the wild there, and it was amazing. We have a viewing scope, and to just sit there, kids got bored, but Brad and I could have sat there all day long just watching these beautiful raptors. So he's still going to need a little bit of, I think, detail and white to sort of bring him all together, but he's starting to really come together nicely here. Definitely going to want to do, I think, some, line work. To just probably will outline him all in white to make him stick out a little bit. He's at the point where he definitely needs to get nice and dry. So come in and just give him some tail feathers there, and I'm going to use some of these same colors, but I'm going to add that bronze yellow and start to build up while he's drying, start to build up my branch with some color. Okay, matte medium is such an amazing tool to have in your toolkit because there is so much that you can do with it. There's so much that you can do with it. You could do the same with clear gesso, but it doesn't work as an adhesive. But it does still create that same sort of barrier. So I'm just going to start building up my branch here to give it, even though we're going for playful, not real, if I can just give it a little bit of added dimension to give it that sense of roundness. Again, it makes it look like it's placed in the page. So just, I'm not worrying about where my light source is, but just kind of assuming that the light is coming from the top, so the undersides of my branches are going to be dark and the top is going to be a little more light. And it doesn't take a lot of paint or a lot of marks to just sort of give that illusion of roundness, right? You can already see just by adding that little bit of dark, a little bit of light, the neutral there in the center, that we can pretty simply create from a distance that impression that our branch is round, that impression that our branch is round. So the only part that feels like it's not working for me to have him popping out, he needs a little bit more detail, but his ears aren't standing out enough from the design above. So I may actually come back and add a layer of white over the top of this design and see how that changes things, knowing that because I have that matte medium, that if I don't like it, I can just take a baby wipe and continue to wipe back to some of those original colors. So I'm going to go in again with acrylics. My personal preference is always to work with a very dry brush. And this may change the whole thing. I may lose all the color and pattern, and I may actually water this white down just a little bit. And if I do, I'm going to be okay with that, because my sense is that I need my owl to pop out from the page more than I want to be attached to the design in the background. And these markers are funny. It's fascinating how they're sort of still just bleeding through and mixing together. I would also say that a gift card or hotel key card is one of my must-have tools. I tend to put on a lot of paint and then push the paint back, really putting layers on, taking layers off. So I can still see a little bit of that pattern underneath, but by adding that white over the top, I'm much happier with how my owl is popping out, and I want my owl to be the focal point here. And again, visual journaling for me is all about the practice, the process, the meaning. There's no, this is not something I'm going to be selling. It's, maybe something I share on social media, who knows, but the point of this is about experimentation, being here with my own creative practice and my own creative process, discovering my style, what I like, what makes me happy, what frustrates me, what works and what doesn't, right? So sometimes I have these, ideas that seem sort of genius in the moment, and then when I actually put them down onto the page, the materials don't do what I want them to do at all. But I'm much happier with that, and so now I'm looking at my little owl thinking, okay, I'm going to be really courageous here, and I think I need a little tiny brush. I tend to prefer a square brush like these to a round brush. I feel like I just have a little bit more control, and I'm just curious about, if I want him to be playful, how could I bring in a little bit more of this orange, make him pop out a little more, and just bring some of this silliness back. So again, we're wanting him to be owl-like. And it's just paint. If I don't like it, I can 100%. And I haven't put any copper on here yet. I want to put some copper on here. But again, I want to brighten him up and make him playful. And now I'm noticing, my silly computer's beeping at me. Thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate that. He's pretty stinking cute, isn't he? Definitely going to want to finish him up with some Poscas and let him get really dry and come in and do some detail work over the top of him, which I will probably do later today, and then tomorrow I will share those final results. And again, I'm just going back and forth between my lights and my darks. He's going to want some white outlines on him. I'd love to see him in my backyard too. You must have lots of owls where you live as well, Kay. I would imagine there's lots of owls in New Mexico. All right, he needs some feet to make him look like he's sitting here on our branch. So we're going to come back in and just give him some little feet. And I'm still feeling like I want to come back in. I can still see that pattern with a white Posca over the top of this and just really come in. So they tend to have 3 little talons, so I'm giving him those 3 little talons, just as if he's peeking over and sitting on the edge of that branch. And he needs to see if we can bring some of the yellow back. So the challenge a lot of times when you're working with yellows is that they're very transparent. They're not a particularly opaque color, and so it can take a few layers. We're putting the white underneath to really build up those yellows. And I think that was what I wanted in the beginning, was to have him just be sort of fun and brightly colored. We'll add maybe just a touch of that yellow to the outsides of his wings, but their wings on the outside tops tend to be pretty dark, but we also want him to sort of stand out from our page. And it's definitely time to let the paint dry and to come in with some detail work over the top of him. I'm thinking that around his eyes, this is, I'm going to tone that down a little bit. I want that to look maybe a little bit feathery in there. So maybe I can give that just a little bit more texture. And let the circles around his eyes still be orange, but blend in just a little bit more. That's making me a little bit happier. And I didn't put any of that orange in his tail, and I'm wondering if maybe he needs a little bit, but we'll try just some yellow. We want the different parts of him to really stand out. I love his little speckled belly. And again, I have managed to, I was sharing this when I was doing the horse painting yesterday, paint out all of the white. And it's time to bring some of that detail back and really make him pop out from the back of the page. And the only way I'm going to do that is by just being a little braver with some of those whites and lights. And also when I come in with the Poscas and add some detail to him. I think that's going to make him pop quite a bit as well. Just continuing to just sort of brighten him up. He's also going to need just that little bit of white in the center of his eye, and I'm just using the end of my paintbrush for that. He's getting close. He's definitely getting close. You're welcome, Marion. It's the only way that we learn is with that experimenting. So we're at about an hour. I usually like to go about an hour. So I am gonna sign off for today, let him get super dry. And then later on this evening when I have a little playtime, I'm going to come back in. I know he's looking pretty good, but his ears need to stand out, so I'm definitely going to come in with some of my Poscas and maybe try to make him just continue to pop out. If I darken his ears, that helps a lot. Now it feels like he's standing out from the page a little bit more. And I'm almost thinking I want his eyes to be more brown and less of the white in the center, but I don't want to touch them until they're completely dry. So I'm going to pause here for now, let him get dry, and I will share the final version with you tomorrow. But it's been a lot of fun experimenting, taking a journey through my own memories of close encounters with owls over the years, and playing and experimenting on a page with drawing, with collage, and just building up those different elements. So wisdom, intuition, insight, all keen symbolism of the owl. And then I'm thinking over here in this space also, I'm going to be adding this affirmation. I trust and believe that everything is always working out for my highest good. And especially in my own creative practice, if I can hold on to that belief that even in the mud and the mess and the mix of learning and discovering, it's always working out for my highest good. I truly do believe that in every aspect of my life. This is Dr. Minette. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will be back tomorrow with another animal painting for our week of animal symbolism. And I have a few circling around but haven't quite landed on what I want to create tomorrow. So I'll let you know tomorrow morning. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm here Monday to Thursday, live at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. And thanks for watching live. Thanks for watching the replay. Love for you to drop a comment and just let me know that you stopped by to have a look at what's going on Painting in Your PJs Live with Minette. Thanks so much. Have an amazing rest of your day.